The Tour de France is done with for another year. The riders have gone home for a much needed break, the bikes have been hung up, but the team managers will be fielding questions on one particular topic for some time yet. Carbon monoxide rebreathing. So, what is it? Is it dangerous? And who's for and against it? Let's get into it. The world of elite sport, and in particular cycling, is full of blurred lines and grey areas when it comes to gaining an advantage, and after a dominant performance by the top 3 riders at this year's Tour de France, questions have inevitably started being asked. This year's topic of debate: carbon monoxide rebreathing. Tadej Pogacar and Jonas Vingegaard insist it's nothing suspicious and just a simple test, but others in the peloton are less convinced. But what actually even is it? Well, simply put, carbon monoxide testing provides an accurate means of measuring hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein that facilitates movement of oxygen in red blood cells, something that is really rather important if you want to be a Grand Tour rider. So, for example, during an altitude camp, it can be used to track a rider's progress over a block of training. The slightly more technical version, which feel free to skip by the way, is that a doctor takes a sample of the rider's blood and then measures the percent of carboxyhemoglobin. They then take a volume of oxygen and add a small but known amount of CO, or carbon monoxide, and then the rider then rebreathes this volume. The carbon monoxide binds to the blood, and then you can take another sample, which means you can determine the percentage of hemoglobin. From this, you can then work out the total amount of hemoglobin in the blood. Are you still there? Basically, it's a very expensive but accurate way of measuring how good your blood is. This practice doesn't break anti-doping rules and is a technique that has been around for decades in the worlds of science and medicine. Where things get slightly more murky though is the potential for misuse. You see, inhaling carbon monoxide using that same device as is used for the tests carried out by the likes of UAE Team Emirates and Visma-Leasabike at altitude camps could assist riders' bodies to produce more red blood cells, an act that, while not banned by WADA, we would assume is in conflict with the anti-doping authority's stance against artificial manipulation of blood. At this point, it is worth pointing out that there is no suggestion that cycling teams are using the carbon monoxide rebreathing device for any purpose other than hemoglobin testing, but you can kind of see how the situation has raised concerns about the potential for athletes to abuse such equipment in search of performance gain, and potentially risking their own health in the process. During the Tour de France just gone, UAE Team Emirates, Visma-Leasabike and Israel Premiertech all admitted to using the controversial test during altitude camps, raising health and ethical questions. But is it safe, and are the concerns justified? Well, the communication from all 3 teams has been clear. It is only used for testing and monitoring altitude training, never for direct performance gain. However, there was some confusion when Pogacar initially said, "I don't know what it is," when responding to a question about the practice. UAE Team Emirates then promptly offered a clarifying statement to the Times website, admitting that they do use the carbon monoxide device. The current race leader then told reporters 24 hours later that he didn't quite understand the previous day's question. When he remembered that he did indeed know what it is, he said, "It's a test in altitude camp to see how you respond to altitude. You need to do this test. It's like a 2 or 3 minute long test. You breathe into a balloon for 1 minute and then you see the hemoglobin mass, and then you need to repeat it 2 weeks after." It sounds like the test didn't all go smoothly for Pog though, as he then clarified that he only did the first part of the test because the girl who was meant to come after 2 weeks didn't come. When asked about the health concerns, he said, "It's not like we're breathing exhaust pipes every day in the cars. It's just a pretty simple test to see how you respond to altitude training." Of course, Pogacar isn't the only rider using this technique, and the Slovenian's rival, Jonas Vingegaard, was also quizzed on his use. He told reporters that it's to measure how much hemoglobin you have in your blood. There is nothing suspicious about it. He went on to explain a little bit more about the test. "We measure how many red blood cells you have in your blood and the effect of altitude training camp. It's one thing what you've thought training at altitude did for you. Now we actually have something that can measure it." They, I think he means the doctors, say that they send something into the lungs that is similar to smoking a cigarette. We measure the day we get to our high altitude camp and then on the day we go back down. Then we see the difference in how much hemoglobin is built up. There is nothing more to it. Israel Premiertech also said that their sole use of the Detalo blood volume analyzer is for testing purposes to measure the impact of altitude training. So is it safe? Well, according to UAE, yes. A spokesperson added, it is a well-established, safe, professional method that is backed up by a very large amount of research. It is used widely by athletes, climbers, and other persons who are exposed to altitude for professional sports or for physical activities. It is, however, safe to say that not everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet, and others have been less relaxed about the use of carbon monoxide rebreathers. Uno X Mobility says that it's not something that they'd ever consider, while EF Education EasyPost boss Jonathan Waters also nailed his team's colours to the mast. It's not something we have ever done or would do. Interestingly, both teams also didn't see the benefit in measuring hemoglobin mass. The Uno X Mobility source unequivocal in their condemnation of the potential further use of a rebreather to inhale carbon monoxide for performance gain. That would be blood doping, make no mistake. As with any great debates that this country faces, we decided to set up a poll to get to the bottom of it. And you guys, it's safe to say, were torn. Over 1,000 of you guys voted, with 52% saying it's nothing suspicious, but 48% saying it's a bit dodge. One thing that does seem certain is that this debate isn't going anywhere. But the problem is, it's extremely hard to monitor. How can you possibly ban a perfectly legitimate testing method just because it could be misused? As always, let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest cycling tech, and we'll see you next time.